brotherhood, multiplication, restoration. We are Sin Network. We're a family, planting churches together. Join us as we hear from leaders of this movement from across North America and discover what it really takes to plant churches everywhere for everyone. We are here on location at the Sin Network gathering in the West in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm here with Libby and Chris, Journey Point Church, Denver, Colorado. Tell me about it. How did you come to start that church, plant that church? Tell me your journey, because you're not originally from Denver. Where are you from?
I'm from Memphis, Tennessee originally.
Memphis, Tennessee. So how did you get to Denver, Colorado?
You know, it's going to sound like the cheesy coined answer, but I mean, only God. Church planting was never on our radar until it was. And so I had a conversation with a church planter that just really, a church planter from the western part of the United States, just broke us, Dhati. I was not aware of just the lack of churches and the need for churches in the western part of the United States. You know, you can get kind of blinders on, get going, doing your thing, doing your deal with your church. You don't really know what's going on in the rest of the world. And so we were just informed, and kind of a guy struck a question, said, man, you'd be a really good planter. And I thought, no, not me. But I told him I'd pray about it. And so we prayed about it, and God really just broke our hearts for the people of the West and the lostness in the western part of the United States and the lack of churches. Memphis has about one church for every 500 people. Denver's got one church for every 32,000 people. But it's got a dispensary for every 11,813. So those numbers struck me. And man, just through praying and fasting, God really just showed us that, man, we didn't have a choice, really.
You said God showed us. Who did he show first? Because, you know, it's always, the us is always relative. So
That's a hard one.
You answer that. Who did he show first?
I really think it was back and forth. And for us, it wasn't immediate, Denver, this is where it is. It was, we'll take one step at a time, God. And it was the West first, and then it was Denver, and then it was our community. And so sometimes it was both of us. I mean, when we chose our community, it was both of us literally at the exact same minute. We're like, this is it. When it was Denver, it was really kind of back and forth. We knew without a shadow of doubt at that point God had called us to church plant, but where it was.
Yeah, because we would have, he would independently lay the same verse on our hearts, like in our own quiet times, separate. Because we said, hey, we need to go about this separately, then come back together, separate. And every time we come back together, he was doing the same thing on both of our hearts. So he really did kind of stain our hearts really both at the same time.
That's good. And what I love about your passion and your heart, it was more than just simply planting a church. It was about reaching the city, right? So talk to me a little bit about like not just going in and starting a Sunday, but really having a desire to reach the city.
Yeah, you know, I've always heard it kind of started in two different ways. You've either got church planting or you have church starting. You're either starting a church or you're planting a church. Church starting is, man, you can raise some funds, you can gather some people, you can get a really cool website and blog and Instagram, and you can get those people in a room and gather and do a worship service. But planting a church is going in and reaching people and worrying more about reaching people than starting a church service. And so for us, it was always, even in Memphis, to be honest with you, Memphis is a hard to love city, to some people. But we had a love and passion for the city because that was where God had called us to. And so the one thing that we wanted to do when we moved to Denver, first and foremost, was love this city no matter what happened with the church. Statistically speaking, church planting is not the most success-oriented business to be a part of, right? I mean, Denver from like 2000 to 2010, 80 to 90% of church plants failed. And so a lot of it was because they were starting a church and not planting a church. And so we said, man, if 10 years from now we're failed in the world's eyes, are we still going to be here reaching these people? And so for us, it was more about reaching the people more than it was starting a worship service or anything like that.
Was that like an official conversation that you had that you have to wrestle, with that? Because a lot of times, pastors and planning couples, when they go into a city, they're thinking, like, if we don't have 300, if we don't have 500, if we don't have, so how hard was it to overcome that hurdle or that obstacle of what we call success?
Yeah. You want to start to that?
Well, I think for us, really starting with the foundations of the friendships and the relationships with the people in our community is what began to grow our church. It wasn't, hey, we're having a service on Sunday, or hey, we have a Bible study get together. But it was those relationships that really helped people realize just the authenticity behind it and helped us begin to really build what Journey Point became to be.
Yeah. You know, people that are spiritually disconnected from Christ, they don't care whether you have 100 or 200 or 300 people there. And so for us, it was never, we kind of talked about it like, hey, if these markers that the world put on us, or not even really the world, the church sometimes put on us, or partnering churches sometimes put on us, if we don't hit these markers, do we care about our neighbors down the road that are really far from God? Do we care enough to stay in this city for me to go back into a secular job and to make sure we reach them no matter what, to be a part of a church or do whatever else if we don't succeed, so to speak? When the funding runs out, I had a bunch of guys ask me, Dhati, when the funding runs out, what are you going to do? And like, that was the first, I had not thought about that, but I had guys intentionally look at me and say, when the funding runs out, what are you going to do? Are you going to go back to the South where it's easier to get a job? Or are you going to stay and really care for the people of your city? Because that's what we see all throughout Scripture.
And you see so many couples, you know, they go back when the funding runs out, you know, and I love what you guys are saying, like planting a church versus starting a church. And so talk to me about that. You mentioned multiple times, reaching my neighbors. Am I going to still stay? Am I that committed? Am I that passionate? Talk to me about, how did that look? You guys came in, and what part of the city did you guys plant in?
So we're in the northeast part of the city of Denver. So we're in the city of Denver.
All right. So the northeast part, I remember, is like the donut.
Yeah.
Is that what we call it?
The donut.
So
we're in the donut hole. Barely.
You're in the donut hole.
We lay claim to that.
Hey, if you're in it. So talk to me about that. How did that look going into this new city, this new neighborhood? Neither one of you from. Did you guys have people go with you, or?
Yeah, you know, so we had about 4 families come with us, and we kind of intentionally didn't take a lot of families with us. You know, Denver's a lot different than Memphis, Tennessee, and it's a lot different than the South. You've moved around, you know it. Even the difference between downtown Atlanta compared to the suburbs. It takes a different breed, and I didn't want to have to de-church so much in order to start a church. And so one of the things we did, we just said, hey, we're going to take a long runway. And so if God's called us, and he had, to plant a church, are we going to be here for the long haul? So does it matter if I start our church next year or a year and a half from now? Or it doesn't matter how long it takes, because God's called us to it. That means we're going to do it. So we took a long runway to it. We did a residency with the church there in Denver, learned from them. And while we were with them, we were able to really engage our city really well. And so, Vance Pittman, one of the best church planters in the western part I know, he told me one time, he said, when you really look at it, he said, you engage the city first, then you make disciples, and then you start your church. Now, most people do it backwards, right? I'm going to start my church, then I'm going to make disciples, then we'll engage the city. And so we just said, hey, let's engage the city the best that we can. So we actually went in, and man, our community is filled with kids. We have 4 kids. We said, hey, if we can engage people in this community, it's going to be through kids. So we just started doing whatever we could to engage people that had kids and families walking around. And we actually built our core team out of mostly people that were in the community we lived in.
That's awesome.
And for us, I knew that they weren't going to leave in a year. I knew that they weren't going to do something else, because their homes were in our neighborhood, right?
So some of the things we started doing were park dates. We had play dates with we are in a new neighborhood, and so it had a new park. So it was like, hey, we're all new neighbors. We're all new to this. Like, let's meet up on Saturdays. We started really investing in helping the local elementary schools. My degree is in early childhood education, and at the time I wasn't teaching. And so I know as a teacher, like, we'll take all the help we can get inside the schools. And so sometimes that looked like donating beverages and stocking their fridge. Sometimes it looked like me going up and helping a brand new teacher set up her classroom. And really just walking through and really kind of trying to get a gauge of, what does the community need? What are they looking for? And who are the people in this community? And
was this the school that your kids went to?
No, so it's kind of a funny story.
So what's really funny is I reached out to the principal. It's in the community where we're actually, it's a new community, so we were moving in there the next April. We knew we were. And I reached out to the principal. I said, hey, would love to come serve your school. And she's like, oh, do you live in the community? No.
Not yet.
Do your kids go to the school?
Not yet.
And now this is an unchurched, like they're not familiar with churched people coming to help, right? So she's like, no, we're good. And so I was like,
That's
man.
weird.
So then I sent another email back. I said, hey, just so you know, like one of the things we want to do is we want to be for this city and not just in it. That's a long-term goal of ours and a value of what we're starting here. And my wife has a background in early childhood education. So she said, hey, actually, they were meeting in the wing of a high school. It was an brand new elementary school.
First year.
First year, they were meeting in the wing of the high school while their building was being built. And so she said, actually, we're really understaffed and kind of overworked. So could you help us? And so it took 4, 5, 6 emails and exchanges. Man, I went up there 4 or 5 times, got nothing. Until finally, they just knew that we were persistent enough that we cared about them, right? Because they saw that we cared about the community. And so we go up there and finally she says yes. And we serve, and Dhati, this is what's great. So this principal comes up to me. This is like the 3rd or 4th time we're there. We're like dropping off drinks at this point, right? And nothing that no one else is doing. She said, hey, when you do this church thing, when y'all like get together, which is, I love moving into the West where nobody knows when you worship, nobody says that, right? So when y'all like get together and do your thing on Sunday mornings, where are you going to do it? I said, well, we don't know. God will take care of that. We have faith and confidence in that. But we just want to serve you now. That's all we're worried about. She said, well, when our building's finished, I would love if you would use our space for your church when you come in. Now, I'm trying to play it cool, right? It's like the guy that asked a girl out on a date for the first time. You're like, you want to play it cool after she says yes. I'm like trying to play it cool. And, but so we leave. It was great. We go up there. She then says this. She goes, I'll come to your services. She goes, and if it doesn't feel like a meeting, I'll keep coming to your services. So now here you have this doctorate educated level professional who's never really been to church in her whole life. She'd been one other time before that. Church to her, she has no idea what to call it, and it's a meeting. And it just broke my heart. And so she was the lens through everything else we did in that school. And lo and behold, she comes to all 3 preview services that we had. She comes to our next service, and then she ended up giving her life to Christ.
Man,
and Libby ends up teaching at the school, which was not in our plans
Not in the
either. You could tell
not in the plan.
Well, and that was one of those that, we began serving, and she was like, hey, can you come back next week? Can you come twice the next week? Well, we're doing interviews. Can you interview? And now, I've been on staff for 2.5 years, and it's just been sweet to not only see just the little things that we've done make a difference, but in her one life. She gave her life to Christ, and I got to give her first Bible. She had never had a Bible before, and never in our wildest dreams did I think moving to Denver would mean me working at a school, gaining a relationship with my principal, and getting to give her her first Bible.
Where in the school do you work?
So I'm a teacher, a classroom teacher now for first grade.
Man, that's amazing. What was the distance from you having your initial contact with the school to?
So we had initial contact in August of 17. They didn't finish the school until August of 18.
Okay.
And which is when she started teaching too. And then we had our first preview service in there November of 18. So it was really, actually, I'm sorry, it was July of 17. So July of 17 to November is the distance between all that.
Yeah, what I love is your perseverance is from going from the beginning of it's okay, weirdo. We don't need your help.
We're weird.
We don't need your help to, can you do it at our school? And I want to come. Like that, there's the perseverance. And I think it's really important because a lot of times planners would have stopped. I guess that's a closed door. But if you're just simply going with, I want to start a service versus I'm trying to reach a city and really love my neighbors. It's huge.
And I think I don't think that happens if we didn't serve them because we wanted a place to. They were in a wing of a high school that we don't use. We were going to serve a need in our city, and so what we did was we said, "Hey, what's the need in our city?" I'm reminded. You have Jesus in Luke 19. This is right after the triumphal entry. And it says he looks upon the city, Jerusalem, and he weeps, right? He was broken for the city. He wasn't broken for a temple service at that time. He wasn't broken for, a worship service that started or a cool logo or a social media plan, which we have all those. But he was broken for the city because of what the city needed. And so for us, it was like, man, what is this city, this community? Honestly, what does our street need first, right? So if I start with the needs on my street and then move out from there, like my community has to be changed if I'm broken from my community. Yeah.
So early on as a church planter, right? And you go in as like, I have to do this to some degree, because I gotta get people.
Yeah, right.
Now that you have people, now that you have a gathering, how do you fight the gravitational pull to now just simply focus on maintaining the church service and keep on reaching your city?
And so one thing we do personally, and I can get some flack from this from some people. So 4 times a year we shut down on Sunday morning and we don't have church service. Instead of having church service, we actually go out and love the city. So we do a thing called Love Denver. And honestly, it just started with the idea that we can all do more together than we can individually. And so, for instance, 95% of our community is spiritually disconnected from Christ. And so for us to invite them to a serve event on Saturday, and then to say, hey, we would love for you to come back to church on Sunday, like that's just not happening right now. And so we just said, hey, for the first year, we're gonna take it, we'll do 4 Sundays, the 5th Sundays, we'll take it, we'll go and serve the city. And so we go and do these Love Denver projects where we go out, we work with the Denver Rescue Mission, we work with the schools, we work with Project Worthmore, which deals with all kinds of refugees that are coming into the city. And so we just found several avenues that we go out and actually be the church. And it has been unreal because now I can go to my neighbor and say, hey, I would love for you to come and serve the city with me tomorrow. And they look at me like, well, hold on, and tomorrow's Sunday?
Yeah.
Well, why are you doing that? Well, that's our most important day, yes. Right. I'm a Highview church guy, but I'm a Highview city guy. And I know and love this community enough that I'll give up that Sunday morning so that we can go and show the people the love of Jesus instead of just asking them to come in. And man, the most fun thing I've been able to do, we did it, the 5th Sunday was in September. We packed meals for kids. So 67% of kids have struggled with childhood hunger in Denver. So we packed meals and we had a ton of people there and a lot of people that had never been to the church before because we kind of promoted it to the city. And so we had this guy come up afterwards. He said, hey man, are you in charge? And I thought, I don't know.
Let me.
Maybe. And I said, what do you mean? He said, are you like in charge of the church? Again, unchurched people have no idea. I said, are you the pastor, right? I said, yeah, I am. He said, man, I don't do church. That's not my vibe, never been. He said, I've never really grown up around it. He said, but I like the vibe that you guys are putting off by serving the city. And that guy got connected immediately to our young adults. He came to church 2 weeks after that, gave his life to Christ. And I got to baptize him a couple of weeks ago. And his family tree forever changed. Yeah. And so.
That's good. How about you? How do you keep from the gravitational pull? So you're working at where you worship. So you're there like 7 days a week.
This last week it was 7.
7 days a week. So, how do you wrestle with that tension?
I think really it goes back to just intentionality. Keeping the focus of, one of our values is being for the city, not just in the city. And what does that look like? Who are our people? How are we engaging with them? And it's not just on a Sunday. For me, it's 5 days a week with the people I work with. It's 7 days a week with our neighbors. We live in a real tight community where everything's rear entry. So we spend a lot of time on our front porches. We spend a lot of time outside, conversations with our neighbors. And, it's been really sweet that it's a real transient city. So a lot of people are moving in. So just getting to know, like, what's your story?
That's awesome.
Where are you from? What brought you here? It's just really trying to be intentional with those relationships, I think is.
I'll say one more thing too. Dhati Lewis can come and preach at our church. J.D. Greer, you name it, those guys can come. And in our community, we could have them with, I don't care who your worship lead, Bethel, Hillsong, or whatever, the Gettys, whatever your creme de la creme is. All of those people could come to our church on Sunday morning. And 95% of my community has no idea who they are. And so for me, a lot of the focus on the city is realizing that like, hey, Sunday morning is an incredible place to start, but it is like not even close to the finish line for these people. Monday through Saturday has to be where we're at. So for us, a lot of it is intentional disciple making too.
Awesome.
And so that's our big focus. We actually measure that in our church. Our big statistics, we measure everything, but our biggest statistics are through intentional disciple making.
That's awesome.
How many people are in those groups?
That's good. So you guys, are you still doing play dates?
We are still doing play dates. We paused a little in the snow, but
Like we serve the community events. So like I don't put on a block party. I serve the community block party. I don't put on a movie night. I serve the community's movie night, their concerts. And so we just make sure that, like, hey, we don't do anything that competes with the communities and what they have going on. So if there's a need now, what's awesome, I got an email this week. Easter's coming up in this time frame. I get an email, they said, hey, we need help packing eggs and doing this. Are you still gonna be doing it? And like a couple of years ago, it was like, who are you? What are you doing? Now when they have a need, they're actually coming to us, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I always tell planters, we need to go from trying to find the person of peace to becoming the person of peace.
Yeah.
So
like when you become the person that, like, I want to reach this neighborhood, I want to do proactive in this neighborhood. That's when when people are calling you, like, what are you doing? We need to know, And so man, I really appreciate you guys' testimony, your story. We need to have more churches, more people going into the city, not just simply trying to start a Sunday, start a service, but to planting, a church. And so really, I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Dhati.
You have been listening to We Are Sin Network, a resource of the North American Mission Movement. For more information about today's podcast and other relevant resources, visit sendnetwork.com.